May this day bring pleasure to our Father. May He be glorified in this time with this conference. We're so grateful for everybody again to join here. I pray that everybody's been having a great time. And this is the final day. We're already at the final day of the conference. I can't believe it. I've made so many new friends. Got to rejoice with some old friends. And it's just such a blessing to be able to see the growth of the body of the Messiah. As we're all, as many people here have said, you're the elect ones. You're the hands and the feet of the Messiah in this time. You were all chosen to be part of this generation. And you know that old saying that the Father gives his hardest battles to his greatest warriors. When I look in this crowd, I know you've all been called to be mighty warriors, generals in his army, and we have such a great job to do. So having this time to come together, to have a refuge, to worship together, to study together, to discuss together, I pray that we never forget the core of who we are is to love one another also. So whether we have friendly debates or discussions about things that we disagree with, that's okay. Always remember, love one another. That's the most important thing. And love your Father in heaven. So with that said, thank you all for worshiping with us today. We're going to go ahead and get started with our first presentation that comes from an infamous friend of ours, Noel J. Hadley, the author of a lot of books and publisher of the Flat Earth, the Unexpected Cosmology, which has a lot of awesome stuff. So I'll let him tell you where you can get involved with his Discord group that has a lot of awesome people, and looking forward to the presentation.
All right, shalom everyone. My name is Noel Joshua Hadley. I am the creator, writer, editor-in-chief, and all-around big burrito over at the Unexpected Cosmology. It's good to see my Tuck family here in the splash zone. I promise I'll try hard not to spit too far as I talk. I'd like to thank Zen Garcia, a friend of mine, for inviting me here on this day, as well as Justin and Joy, the entire Sacred Word family, for hosting this wonderful event. I'm going to get right into it because I got tons to cover today, and I see the clock in front of me is already ticking down so fast. So this is Millennial Kingdom plus Mud Flood, and if you have questions as to what that is, I promise to answer some questions, but give you way more questions than answers. So this is, of course, the mud flood, and I was I came here today thinking that everyone had a basic understanding what the mud flood was, and since being here over the weekend, I've had probably a couple dozen people come up to me and go, "Are you the mud flood guy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I'm the mud flood guy." And they're like, "I just heard about the mud flood 15 minutes ago," and I'm like, "Oh man!" So. Anyway, so here you go. Here's the mud flood right here. The mud flood was a worldwide event, or a series of events that happened, we estimate, about 200 years ago, give or take. Let's just throw out a random year out there, 1812. It's a nice clean number. And you can test this out for yourself in any old city, and I challenge everyone to do it. It's just like the flat earth. You can go out and test this and discover this. And we see all over the world. You see the two pictures on the right is somewhere in Russia. Over there in the middle is on the west coast of America. I can't remember if it's Portland or Seattle. It's one of the two. And then right here we see Washington, D.C. This picture right here, Washington, D.C., was right after September 11th, 2001. And for whatever reason, they opened up the state capitol building there along the National Mall. And you could see that it goes much, much deeper, that they built this building way down. You can see here in the west coast of America where they are literally driving. They built a city up over an old building. And so all over the world, we have this event, a mud flood event that submerged the earth in about 12 to 15, maybe 20 feet on average, and some places much more than that. And for whatever reason, instead of digging it all out, they decided to just start building on top of it. And so the thing about the mud flood is that I challenge you to go to any history book, any Illuminati written history book, and find where the mud flood happened. It didn't happen. So this is a worldwide conspiracy that the governments of the world decided to get together. Everyone is so worried about the New World Order coming. Well, I'm telling you, the New World Order has been here for 200 years, some iteration of a worldwide conglomerate of deception. And it all goes in with the flat earth theory as well. So here's my own hometown of Charleston, South Carolina, about 5.5 hour drive from here. These are just a few photos that I took with some friends out on a tour. We have dozens and dozens of photos. I'm not going to take you through all of them. This is something you could test for yourself. Charleston, South Carolina was built, is a city that goes down about 12 to 15 feet. And you can see here where they just bricked in whole archways. You could see where there's these staircases going down to these doors that lead, they just built doors apparently underground. Now the big thing about this is that Charleston, according to official history, started 2 wars. They were instrumental in the American Revolution. Of course, they started the American Civil War. Nowhere do you see anything about the mud flood. Over there on the right, that's the big giveaway right there. You see, they'll tell you these are like crawl spaces, but who puts door hinges on a crawl space like that, big enough to put, this door was so big you could pull a horse and cart through it. Here's another picture from my hometown of Charleston, and this is a whole series of photos you can find what we call vanilla skies. And for whatever reason, we have all the thousands of photos in the 1800s, and somebody made it their effort to crop out the skies. They took scissors to it because they don't want you to see what's in the skies. Now, the big giveaway in this photo here, the reason why we know that the entire sky was cropped out, and this is a popular picture of the end of the Civil War when Charleston was in ruins, is you can see right there in the center, in the rafters, the sky is darker. They weren't able to crop that out, but they were able to crop out all the sky around it. So what were they hiding? And this is a big question we have. Was it air technology before they invented airplanes, all these kind of things? Here is the city of Jerusalem, and now many people in the mud flood research claim that the land of Israel is not the historic Israel, that it's in other places. Many of them are looking to the United States, America, as the land of promise. And I myself hold that the land of Israel is the historic Israel. If somebody can come up with really good evidence to point to another location, like a lot of people are looking to Utah, I'm happy to look at it. But anyways, what's interesting about Jerusalem is that, it was just a flea market in the desert in the 1800s covered in mud. You can see the oldest photos. It's all buried. In fact, on the far right here, this archaeologist, I follow his YouTube channel, forgive me, I can't remember his name at the moment, but he's giving a tour of the actual location. They found the actual chair where Pontius Pilate judged Yahushua HaMashiach. And that red line there, he's saying that his college professor back in the 70s excavated that site. In the 1970s, up to that red line, it was covered in mud. And he said that his professor would put his lunch every day in that hole in the wall right there. So it's crazy to think about that they were still digging Jerusalem out of the mud in the 1970s, not that long ago. Now, this is a general timeline that I'm going with here. And I'm not really big on charts, but a lot of people really like the visuals. And I put a lot of work. I will not be covering a few things today. I will not be covering why I believe the year 70 AD is so important to understanding. A lot of people, there's this big push to say Revelation was written in the 90s, and it's to jar you, to detach you from the fact that I believe all of Scripture was written by 70 AD, and that it was all fulfilled. And in my research, I have shown that the Greek LXX is the more accurate timeline. In fact, all the New Testament writers were quoting from the Greek LXX. The Masoretic is the Hebrew Masoretic is the youngest text we have. The Greek LXX is 1,000 years older than the Hebrew Masoretic. I don't have time to go into all that, and you can research that for yourself. So, according to the Greek LXX timeline and all the books that are the extra biblical books that are associated with it, Yahushua HaMashiach arrived in the year 5,500. Now, according to Hebrew Masoretic, he arrived in the year 4,000. So you have a 1,500-year discrepancy right there. That's a huge problem. He arrived in the year 5,500, and according to all this timeline, the millennial kingdom of Yahushua HaMashiach came upon the earth physically, not spiritually, physically upon this earth in the year 500 AD. Now, what's interesting about this is that 500 AD is when Rome fell. And this is when we learned that the Dark Ages came upon the earth from 500 to 1500. That's Orwellian language right there. The Dark Ages were really the Light Ages, all right? So it was not primitive, it was not barbaric. It was a time, I believe, that the millennial kingdom was on the earth and the saints were ruling with Yahushua HaMashiach. In the year 1500 is right when we get into, Christopher Columbus, 1492. We get the fall of the Knights Templar. We get all these things happening, and we go into the age of enlightenment, which is the age of awakening to the divine within. And this is an age of rebellion, and you see it in the art and the architecture and all these kind of things. Rebellion against the kingdom, and finally, we get to what we call Satan's little season. Now, this comes with Revelation 20. I'll go over this really quickly. So a lot of people ask, people ask me, so Noel, you think the end times have already happened? I'm like, well, technically, we are in the end times. We're just really, 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 really far in the end times, much further than anyone speculated previously. And so a lot of people are wondering if the year 1776, July 4th, 1776 is the date of Satan's release from prison. And again, a lot of people will say, well, what prophecy is left? Well, I will encourage you. The menorah, of course, has 7 lights on it. And the last one is a representative of the 8th great day. The 8th great day has not been fulfilled yet. And I will encourage everyone to do a Bible study on all the references to the 8th great day. I will start you out on one, I'll give you one breadcrumb for your trail, and that is circumcision, all right? Circumcision happens on the 8th day. What is associated with circumcision? The resurrection, all right? Circumcision of the heart, there is still a lot we're looking forward to. All right, right here you see a Mont Saint Michel. If someone put a gun to my head, I could not pronounce a single French word correctly. But that was one of the greatest experiences of my life going out there. In fact, if you are a J.R.R. Tolkien fan, he used that as inspiration for Middle-earth. Interesting thing, it's just a surreal experience going there. Now, one of the things about this is that they will tell you that they built this specifically as a monument to the actual location that Michael conquered Satan and threw him into the abyss. What was the battle over? The battle was over Great Britain. The battle started on Great Britain. They went across the sea, and it ended right there. That's the spot. And so here we see Revelation 21-3. For those of you who need caught up to what I'm advocating, it says, "And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand." And I would assume, at least according to this, it's talking about Michael. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little time. Now, I will point out that the 1,000 years come to an end. That doesn't mean Satan is released right at the end of the 1,000 years. It's after that. There could be any number of years before he's released again. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. For those of you who love the Twilight Zone like I do, I'm not going to even give context to that. You had to have been there. That's my favorite TV show of all time. But we see a chart of the short season, and this is the population of the world over the last 12,000 years, and you see that there's, according to the official narrative, there's hardly any population growth, and all of a sudden, 1800, and boom, it shoots up, and we've got billions and billions of people in the world. And that's telling you that there was some catastrophic events a couple hundred years ago. A lot of people died, and then we have, very few people are left on the earth. We have a huge, huge influx of population. Cabbage Patch Babies, this is fun. Over there on the right, you see that the first film, this is, of course, debated by historians, but the first film ever made, a silent film in the 1800s, happened to be about the Cabbage Patch Babies. So think about this. The first film ever made was about harvesting babies, all right, and handing them off to people. And there's something very esoteric about why they come out of cabbage patches, the Cabbage Patch Babies. And I put a couple of scripture verses here. We see one from Jasher, and this is actually I didn't have room to put the whole chapter in here. So I'll just read this little passage here. And the babes of the children of Yasharel were upon the earth like the herb of the field. This is context. This is when Moses is born and Pharaoh's trying to kill them all. Let me just see here. And when all the Mitzrayim saw this thing, the Egyptians, they went forth, each to his field with his yoke of oxen and plowshare, and they plowed it up as one plows the earth at seed time. And when they plowed, they were unable to hurt the infants of the children of Yasharel. So the people increased exceedingly. Basically, the story is that the children of Israel are basically like they're living in the herbs in the fields and like in the dirt, and the Egyptians are trying to plow them up to kill them, and the angels are protecting them. It's pretty crazy. And then we found this other passage here in the book of the Natsarim. And it actually says that when Yahushua HaMashiach resurrected, Yosef's garden, it was a cabbage patch. I found that really awesome. There's something connected with like cabbage patch babies and the resurrection. And this will lead into my next point. Actually, this is just, I'm not even going to explain this. Some of you will get this, some of you won't. In the 1800s, after the mud flood, we have this phenomenon called the orphan trains. And this actually went into the 1900s. A lot of people, they say, we freed the slaves in the 1860s, whatever. Actually, slavery went on a lot longer than that. And it's almost like if you ever saw the original George Lucas Star Wars movie where the two droids are taken by the Jawas and they're all lined up and the farmers go out and you kind of slap the thigh and check the teeth and be like, I'll take these two right here. That's actually what they did. They had millions of children without parents, huge influx of children. We don't know where they came from. And they are being taken to Australia, they're taken through Russia, they're taken through Ellis Island and put on trains and hauled out west, and they're repopulating the earth with all these children. We don't know where they came from. And so, again, we have all these photos and documentation of just factories and coal mines and all these places where nothing but children were taken in there to work. And it's like, where were all the adults? Why did they need so many children to work their jobs? And one of the stunning things too is that many people will look at when they study their genealogies, they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue that they actually came from the orphan trains, their ancestors. Speaking of trains, one of our big theories is that the train routes, we are told they were built in the late 1800s, when in fact they were way, way before that. And it is my conclusion that the American West already had trains going all the way out to California at a very early time. And I think one of the theories I put forward for this is, you can see in Leviticus 23 there, and it talks about the wave sheaf offering. And a lot of these train routes, you can see there, they all lead to these huge palaces and Capitol buildings, cathedrals, and I think that they were leading the people to the different priests so that they can give their offerings. Also, I'll point out that you see things like the Donner Party. That was a fake story put forward by the Freemasons and the Jesuits in the newspapers. And the whole lesson is you keep to the trail, don't go off, because they didn't want them finding these places. They didn't want to find the railroads, the roads, the cities. You keep to the trail, or else you're going to end up eating each other. That was the moral of the lesson. Now, this is another interesting phenomena that we see all through history. And you could, again, test this out for yourself. How can I explain this as simply as possible? It appears as though there was a count in AD that went up to the 700s, so 4, 5, 6, 700, and then it stopped. And then suddenly, for whatever reason, our controllers decided to add 1,000 years, and we go from the 700s to the 1700s, to the 1800s. And one of the ways you can look at this for yourself, you can test this out, and you can look at old coins, maps. You're going to see a lot of these apparent ones, and they're actually eyes. The eyes for Jesus, the year of Jesus, 592, 602. The big giveaways there in Boston, I love that one because you see the year of Jesus, 734. Now, a lot of people will say, no, that's just a Roman numeral 1. It could be. But then you're going to see a lot of the big giveaways is when they put an X for Christos, or my favorite is J for Jesus. And you'll see like a J, 643 or something like that. You're like, okay, well, there it is right there. Now, some of you, especially if you've been in the Flat Earth Awakening for some time, you're going to know about the Urbano Monte map. In fact, I think it was Rob Skiba who actually made it popular. It's a phenomenal map that I would ask all of you just to spend a day of your life just absorbing every little detail in there. It is an amazing map. And it gives away a lot of stuff. So over here we see the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. And this is what I would propose may very well be Millennial Kingdom architecture. It means it was here a long time ago, and this was a part of the World Fairs. I don't have time to go over the World Fairs, where they were hauling millions and millions and millions of people on horse and buggy days back when they had a farm to harvest, and they were successful in pushing them out into these World Fairs, which I believe are these really old Millennial Kingdom cities. And they would put on psychodramatic episodes, like they would assassinate a president at one, or they would have a serial killer show up at another, or they would, take people to Chicago and burn it down in front of them. And so what's interesting about the Urbano Monte map is that the Bay Area of San Francisco was not officially founded until 1776. It was not named the city of San Francisco until 1845. They were preparing for the Gold Rush hoax. That's right. It was James Marshall and Sutter actually never found gold. They made the whole thing up. But they needed a reason to get people out there. But right there, you can see this Urbano Monte map was dated 1587. I put a red there for the I because it's really 587. But you can see right there, clear as day, San Francisco. It's a city in 1587, how does that work with the official narrative? How in the world did the map maker in 1587 know that San Francisco would be discovered 200 years later and built up in the Bay Area? So here's another huge clue to the puzzle, and these are melted cities all over the earth. There appeared to have been a point in history when there was a cataclysmic judgment on humanity, on the cities, and we just see melted cities. We see it all over from the Grand Canyon up through the Colorado Rockies, up to Salt Lake City, just melted cities. In fact, the Native Americans have stories about that. And we see it all through the Middle East, particularly in Turkey. I see a lot. They're everywhere. And I put 2 Peter in here because you all know the passage. And he talks about how in the past, Yah judged with water. Well, he has changed now, and his new agenda is to burn with fire. And he says that Sodom and Gomorrah were those mile markers. From now on, he's judging with fire. Well, then I ask you, when did this happen? Because I believe this happened after 2 Peter was written. There was a worldwide judgment event. We see melted cities everywhere. Over there you see Petra, melted city. I mean, you see some of these like leaning over, and I mean, just there's so many photos I could take you through on that. Hey, I think I'm doing good on time. Still not going to make it through, but I'm doing pretty good. I'll cover this really quickly. Any Californians here? Anybody? Yeah? A few Californians? You probably heard about California being an island at one time. We have tons of maps, and all showing that California was an island. And in fact, here on the left, they kind of show that California, like the Catalina Islands, would have originally been the mainland. Some cataclysmic event happened in rather recent history that sunk California into the ocean. And not only that, the land rose because there was you see the residue of it, like with the Salton Sea, and in fact maybe even the Great Lakes in Salt Lake City. That might have been beachfront property back then. Now going back to the burnt cities, I've done a lot of contrast and comparison between the melted cities and these grand cities like London, or here we have Rome, right? And what I showed was this passage in Luke when he's sending out the 70 and he's saying to them what they're commanded to do. And he says, those who reject the message of the kingdom, it says, the kingdom, he says, it shall be more tolerable in that day for Sodom than for that city. So the basic idea is that when the kingdom came in, the people who had rejected the message, those places were toast. But the places that embraced it, I think that they flourished as cities. And of course, where was Paul writing to? I know everyone says, well, that's the Vatican, with the Roman Catholic Church. Well, where was Paul writing to? We know that the church was flourishing in Rome. They embraced the message of the gospel, and I believe they were rewarded for it. Another big one is Britain. By all accounts, Britain was the first fully converted to Mashiach place on the earth, and I believe they were greatly rewarded for it. Actually, I believe my conclusions are that the United Kingdom was ground zero for the Millennial Kingdom. And again, I don't have time to go into the planting of Israel there. However, we can see on a very esoteric level. I mean, they're telling us the lion and the unicorn. We all know that the lion is the Lion of Judah. This is the Yahudim reconnecting with their brother Manasseh and Ephraim again. So what did I put for? I put these down like 2 months ago. So what did I write? This comes from Deuteronomy 33:17. His glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of a unicorn. Okay, so this is identifying Ephraim and Manasseh with the unicorn. And then we see in let's see. Oh, Revelation 5:5, and one of the elders said unto me, weep and uphold the Lion of the tribe of Yehuda. Okay, so we have that established there, that those are the two tribes. And the idea is that Yehuda was ruling, I believe, from the throne in Great Britain. We all know who that is, Yahushua HaMashiach. And then the stone of scone comes into that, and fun stuff. And here, once again, you see the Tav, and the flag of Great Britain. You actually see it everywhere, the mark. And we see here in Isaiah 11:12, and he shall set up an ensign for the nations. I think that's it right there. And shall assemble the outcasts of Yasharel and gather together the dispersed of Yehuda from the four corners of the earth. So everyone's asking, when is the second Exodus? Sorry to break the news, but I actually think it happened, and this was the ensign. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Yehuda shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Yehuda. That's important. Ephraim shall not envy Yehuda, and Ephraim shall not vex Ephraim. I think that's a prophecy for the Millennial Kingdom. I'll go over this really quickly. We see that this comes from 2nd Esdras. We see that the tribes of Israel, when they were divorced, vomited from the land. They went out to Nineveh, they went out to Assyria, and eventually they went all the way east, and we see on old maps here, 2nd Ezra identifies the land where they went as Arzareth. And we could see here, you see there's Tartaria right here. I call this the lost tribes of Tartaria. Everyone wants to know about Tartaria. And right there on the map, if you see where that ship is going through the strait, right to the left of it, it says Arzareth, and it's letting you know that's where they went. In fact, a lot of these cities all through here, you see Naphtali and Reuben and Manasseh, they were all in here. And of course, they went over, call it a land bridge, whatever you want. They went right over to America. They settled in there, had big cities, and we all know about the Native Americans. All right. Actually, I'm 5 minutes behind now, so we're still doing good, though. All right, this is what I really wanted to cover for you guys today. And this is a section I call the Hidden Wilderness and the Moon Map. So right over there where you see the red circles, that's actually for the circuit of the sun and the moon going through their gates, as Enoch would say. And you can actually see the AE map right there. You can see our realm. This is an inverted image of the moon. And I'll talk more about what you're actually looking at, but you can see where we're at in the United States of America, kind of up there in the right corner. You see South America below us. And then you have what's called, what is this? I can't even read it. A Vista something or other. You have this huge just chunk of land to the left. And I think this is what Admiral Byrd was talking about when he talked about beyond the poles. So what we're actually looking at when we're looking at the moon is we're looking at composite imaging. We're looking at two separate pictures. And it's important to note that the moon cannot be landed upon. It is most likely plasma. It's, you can go on and on talking about the mysteries of the moon. But you can see side by side. Now, for those of you who maybe learned photography in the dark room before the digital era, you'll know what a negative is. You all remember, back in the day when you go to the 1 hour photo and they would give you your 24 pictures with like the negatives in there, and everything would be inverted. So my skin might be like dark, and then I might have like really, eerie kind of like white pupils. Everything is reversed. So the same thing is with the moon. It's actually a negative image. I believe it was actually a photograph taken of the Earth. I don't know if this was taken on the fourth day of creation, when the moon was created, and it was like a snapshot of that moment in time. I don't know if this is a picture of the ancient world, before Genesis 1:1. I couldn't answer that. But over there, we see the composite image. That is the only known photograph we have of the firmament, and it's on the moon. In fact, you see like the belly button. That's what gives it its spherical look right over there. And of course, I put the Shroud of Turin there. And the reason I did that is because I kind of feel like we're looking at something very, very similar. And I'm not going to go all into the Shroud of Turin. For those of you who research it, you know that there's two images on the shroud. There is his whatever his skin touched, the blood went on there. But then in a moment of time, we get the snapshot, basically like an atomic bomb, basically going off. The type of energy in there to create a 3D image in the shroud. We see something very, very, very similar in the moon. It's something like a highly just energetic event. And I put there, I guess I should read what I put. We live in an electrical realm. Cosmic electromagnetic energy is passed back and forth between the flat, motionless plane below and the firmament above via the ether. And the moon tells us that. So going more into the greater realm, and I really think this, what I call the hidden wilderness over here, is so key and central to understanding the globe earth deception, as well as the millennial kingdom deception, and why they've lied to us, not just about the earth, but the entire timeline. We think we're in a completely different time than we really truly are. So this work right here comes from a guy, a YouTube channel. I'll go ahead and plug him, Vibes of Cosmos. I recommend checking him out. And what he did here, a lot of flat earthers have this idea that Antarctica is this ring around us. Well, what he's showing is that Antarctica is actually a series of islands, and it's all frozen in there. And what he did was he took he's done tons of work, but he took all the different bases from the different national entities on Antarctica, on the globe, and he lined them up, and he showed perfectly to the exact mile where they would all be stationed all around us there. All right, so one of the themes of literature very, very, very early on, like Jules Verne and others, was this idea that somewhere in our realm there is this lost kingdom, of dinosaurs and primeval creatures. And you see like Jurassic Park, King Kong, that one over there is also the 1970s King Kong. The reason I did these is because in all of these, they always put up these like huge fences to keep the beast, the monsters in, right? You don't want them to break out. Well, the complete opposite true is of the hidden wilderness. Now, I put a quote there from a book that hardly anyone has ever read, and it's a phenomenal academic literature I recommend for all of you. The narrative of Zosimus, and the whole thing is about the hidden wilderness. And he talks in there how basically it's the reason why it's hidden is because of Hasatan. And as long as Hasatan is free, it is disclosed. As soon as he is put in the abyss, it opens up. As soon as he is released from the abyss, it closes again. So my conclusion is that during the Millennial Kingdom, everyone would have known about the expansive realm, and then the globe earth deception was how they shut it up again, telling us that there was a lot less land than there really is. So for you J.R.R. fans out there, and here's a picture from the recent Lord of the Rings series on Amazon. A lot of people don't know this, that the Undying Lands. J.R.R. was into some deep stuff, I'll tell you. He and C.S. Lewis. They had this head knowledge that just blows me out of the water. I know I have a C.S. Lewis fan in here somewhere. And I think that the elves are a great metaphor for the Millennial Kingdom saints. Everyone hated them, and they were immortals, all this kind of stuff. They were the protectors of the realm, and they finally had to sail off to the Undying Lands. A lot of people don't know this, that according to Tolkien's cosmology, the Earth started out flat, and then there was a cataclysmic event which made it into a globe, which is really lame on an exoteric level. On an esoteric level, it's pretty brilliant. And he basically says, in order to get to the Undying Lands, the lands where the elves go in the west, that you actually have to leave globe Earth. You have to take a high road. What he's basically saying on an esoteric level is that you can't use globe maps. You have to use a flat Earth map to get there. That's why it's hidden for the elves. What was the point of this? It was other than being funny. Well, you can just read that and I'll just move on. Oh, yeah, digging into the paleo. that the sons of Korach actually means in the Paleo sons of the ice wall. And so when you're reading from Psalm 48 and some of those, it's pretty crazy because it talks about how Zion is in the north and there's this worldwide assault on Zion in the north, and so it's kind of interesting, the idea that these priests, their names is the sons of the ice wall, the land beyond. Oh, this is a fun little thing. In our studies in Hebrew Revelation, yes, Revelation is in Hebrew, everyone gets really excited. Ooh, a new book. They opened up the books. And then we read about how the 144,000 are women. And as soon as people hear that, they're like, shut the book. I don't want to hear that anymore. That goes against everything I've ever learned. But in Hebrew, they are women. And I love it, and that plays a part in the kingdom. And I tell people, it's pretty awesome that the 144,000 are women, because you can be a knight of the realm and you can protect the ladies. Of course, that one looks pretty, I don't know what she's doing with that sword. That's pretty badass over there, cutting off that head. This is awesome. I'm making good time. This really flipped me out when I read it. The Book of Pearl, it's considered perhaps the greatest find coming out of the Dark Ages. Only one copy survived. We don't know why. We could speculate. But in this book, it's another tale of a man who goes to the hidden wilderness to see his daughter, who actually happens to be one of the 144,000. She confirms that they're all women. And there in that book, he actually goes and sees New Jerusalem. That really tripped me out. The big argument is when New Jerusalem comes down. Does it come down at the beginning of the Millennial Kingdom or after the short season? I'm of the opinion it comes down after the short season. But I've read plenty of ancient texts where they're telling you, when they write this 1,000 years ago, hey guys, New Jerusalem's already here. It's already come down. So people, they fall for the Bill Nye fallacy all the time. When he looked out over the ocean, where's China? I can't see China. And so people are like, where's New Jerusalem? No, I can't see it. Well, he hides it. The greatest example I have is when Pharaoh is pursuing Moses into the Red Sea. The pillar of cloud comes down, and it's light for Israel, and it's darkness for Pharaoh. And he surrounds himself with darkness. He hides his holiness, and it's a place where only the immortals can go, only the people who are righteous and not sinners. I don't need to comment on that one. We'll just move on. I'm running out of time. Oh, the Prague clock. This is a lot of fun. I'll spend a few minutes on this one. So up here we see, the big question is are we in the age of Aquarius yet? Nobody really knows. I speculate that September 23rd, 2012 is a good marker for the age of awakening. We are seeing people all over this flat, motionless plane just waking up. I have never seen anything like this. I mean, the more our sick, sadistic, sociopathic controllers lie to us and lie to us and lie to us, people are just waking up, waking up, waking up, waking up. The ultimate truth we can come to is to Yah's instructions in righteous living, to his Torah. Many people reject that, but it's amazing that people are just coming to knowledge of the Torah, even if they reject it. Now, it takes about 25,800 years for the sun to go completely around the zodiac. Let me explain this. At the spring equinox, one of these 12 constellations, the sun is going to be in one of them. So this is how we kind of measure what age we're in, right, in the spring equinox. And so right now, the sun is moving into Aquarius, and it takes, again, 25,800 years estimated for the sun to make a complete cycle. And so we see over here the Prague clock, and it's of course in Prague, and it's this amazing medieval cosmic clock that gives the same story. It tells you about the 25,800 year journey of the sun and the moon. So over here, what I did is I took the moon map and I overlaid it with like a kind of a fake crescent moon, and what you can see is what happens is with true north, okay, that's represented by the pink line there with N, it's actually moving away from what we call Hyperborea, and it makes a complete circle. And what happens is the sun and the moon, they move around true north, and they just keep moving around and around and around. So the idea is in about 12,000 years or so, we will be in an ice age here. This will be dark and ice. And when you look at global warming, for example, there's some of it's a hoax, some of it's not, because you got two types of data coming in. There's people putting data out that the glaciers are melting, and then there's people putting data out that it's hardening and getting thicker. Well, according to this, that makes perfect sense, because if the sun is constantly moving clockwise around the realm, the ice is going to melt as it moves around, and it's going to thicken as it moves away. So the ice wall is constantly fluctuating around the realm. And then we see esoterically all over the earth this crescent moon. This is, kind of personal to me, because down here we see the crescent moon of South Carolina. This was the original flag of South Carolina. They added the palm tree in 1861, I think, to give the finger to Lincoln's federal income tax. But this was the original one. It's kind of interesting that in the crescent moon, we see the word liberty. We see it with the Muslims. They have the crescent moon. I will remind everyone before anyone trips out on me that actually they did not incorporate the crescent moon until the last 100 years. I think they might have started really using it in the 1800s. It was with the fall of the Ottoman Empire that it became the universal symbol. Controllers are all using this everywhere. We see it over here on crests. And what does this mean? Well, my conclusion is that we are in the crest is the outer realm that we are not in. We are in the dark of the moon. And this is why I call this the outer darkness. And I've done a lot of studies on this, and 5 years ago I would have told you a very different story about the outer darkness. I suspect that we are in the outer darkness. We are the descendants of the rebels. We are the ones who, we are coming to repentance. And we can enter, of course, the kingdom is within us, but upon our death, we can enter into the physical kingdom, the realm. But we are in the place of the weeping and the gnashing of teeth. We are the children of sorcerers and the unclean outside in New Jerusalem. We were not welcomed into it. And up here, Bob Noel just died a couple months ago from Globebusters. He was the one that kind of made this popular, what's called the coffee cup experiment. And you could do this yourself. You can put a concentrated light into a coffee cup, and you will see how it will create a crescent around it. Now, he showed this to explain how you could wrap light around the firmament. But in this context, all the texts I read, like the visions of Paul and others, Paul talks about how he goes to the hidden wilderness, and it's within the firmament where New Jerusalem is, but it's outside the realm of the sun and the moon. It's outside of the circuit. It's a place that should be total darkness. It's beyond the ice. But there is a light. We all know what the light is. It's the light of Yahushua HaMashiach. There is no need for the sun or the moon there. And you can see that a concentrated light there would light up that whole realm around the firmaments, and it would, all the books I've ever read on the hidden darkness, it is always a land of much brighter, intense light than we have ever experienced here. Well, I have a few more minutes. I'm not going to get into the architecture, unfortunately, all the beautiful Gothic cathedrals that are, like an antiquity-tac, amazing stuff that was all about harvesting energy from the ether for the betterment of humanity to heal the nations. But this is kind of fun. They tell us that there's no plumbing in the Dark Ages. And in fact, that was one of the things that, Christianity is to blame for that, because they brought down Rome by their poop problems because they didn't like to wash their hands or use plumbing. You can see down there the Roman toilets. They like to, the senators, they like to continue their conversations. They went right to the toilets and just kept going. And then up here we see the only known toilets from the Middle Ages. It's called a golden tower. It also has other fun names. But it was apparently this little pee hole that you just let it all down the wall into the moats and all that kind of stuff. And so here's a fun quote by Legends of the Jews, and I have backed this up by other passages. And it says, while the people were still abed, Elohim fulfilled their desire and rained down manna for them. So this is the generation in the wilderness. They received the manna. For this food had been created on the second day of creation and ground by the angels. I'll go ahead and read the red parts for lack of time. It says, for in the future world, manna will be set before them. It's talking about the millennial kingdom. In the reign of Messiah, the people would get manna once again. And importantly, it says they will have no need of easing themselves. It means that if you eat the manna, you don't have to pee, you don't have to poop. as manna is entirely dissolved in the body. This is actually important because people have this theological debate. If the camp in the wilderness was something like 14 square miles or something like that, and you were supposed to basically carry your poop outside the camp, every single time you pooped, you had to go on like a 10 to 14, maybe a 20-mile hike. Like, how is that possible? Well, according to some of these texts, the idea is that the only reason you would ever have to carry your poop is if you sinned. If you eat the manna and you don't sin, you don't poop. If you eat the manna and you do sin, you're taking the walk of shame and you're carrying and they're ringing the bell, shame, shame. Also, according to Legends of Jews, but also I love this because I back this up with the ascents of Yaakov. That comes from the Clementine homilies. It says that whatever you imagine the food to be, it tasted like that. If you wanted apple pie, if you wanted whatever, and of course you guys all know the reference there with Willy Wonka. So that's really awesome. So rained down manna, it was good. And so you have to wonder, when the people were complaining about how terrible the manna was, this was food of the angels from heaven, it could taste like whatever they want. Maybe they were complaining because they had to eat it and carry the poop out because they were sinning. All right, so I'm going to end on this. I got a few more minutes. And we see something called water consciousness, and this would lead into the sacred geometry and the architecture of the Gothic cathedrals and how they were built perfectly for these purposes. And this was presented, I believe, yesterday, this idea that you can do these experiments with plants, but you can also do it with water. And you could say nasty, ugly things, and the water molecules will change to something ugly, and you could say something beautiful, and they will make these sacred designs. Some of them look a little cultist to me, but and then of course you see like the eye of Sauron down there for evil, and yeah. So think about that. Like, think about your DNA, and how when you say nasty things, you're even changing your very own construct. And what we're finding is in all these ancient cities, all throughout Europe and all over the world, they were building these cities, these Millennial Kingdom cities, these cathedrals all around water. You could think of a moat, for example. No, it wasn't to keep the dragons out. And but even Paris, there's evidence that was like the rivers of Venice at one time, that it might have been streets of water. And it was very, very important to build your city around it. We see, well, I'll just jump to this real quick. We see star cities, for example. All these old maps from medieval cities, they were built with sacred geometry in mind. It was all a way of harvesting the ether, positive energy, healing people. And here's star forts, and we're told that these were designed by Michelangelo. He designed a lot of stuff. And that these were war forts. Well, the problem I have with this is that when you think of war, I think of evil, I think of hate, I think of things like that. I don't think of thank you, wisdom, truth, eternal love, angel, things like that. And we see all these all over these star forts. Now, my theory on this, and they were, of course, built around water. That was very important. A lot of them are out in the ocean. My theory on this, I could find be wrong if someone can come up with something better, is that we see in Leviticus 13 that these were for those who were unclean, who were sick. They were places to go. Maybe a priest would be stationed there, and it was a place to go outside of the camp to get better. And they would have been cities like this. If you go to the star forts in America, they were completely destroyed by the military, and they give you illustrations that make it look like a military camp. No, they would have had castles like this. I'm sorry, you would not build a castle like that for self-defense. If you're building a star fort to stop cannon fire and things like that, you're not going to build a big, beautiful castle like that. It's not going to work. I'm going to end there because now I'm going to go into the cathedrals and I just don't have time for it. So I have 3 minutes left. I have time for the clock is showing me no mercy today. So if anyone has a reasonable question that I can actually answer, anyone out there? Yes?
So you don't believe in the traditional 7 years of tribulation and 1,000-year millennial reign after that, obviously.
I believe in a pretty traditional position, and in fact, I would tell anybody, I would say, okay, let's say that the Millennial Kingdom hasn't happened yet, and let's start building our eschatology. I'm going to find that most people, we're going to be on par with everything. all right? Everyone agrees there's a millennial kingdom, and then it ends, there's Satan's deception, and it ends on a really dark note. I mean, because the entire world is deceived by Satan, and all that's left is the camp of Yah, the center of the earth, and the nations surrounded to destroy the last remaining stronghold of Yahushua HaMashiach. That's pretty grim. And so what people don't like to hear a lot of the time is that we are at that point. They want to hear, well, that's way off in the future and that kind of stuff. So, no, I agree with a lot of the eschatological models, not all of them, but some of them. I just have the opinion that Yahushua HaMashiach showed up as the last great prophet. He prophesied the destruction of Jerusalem. It was aside from his resurrection, it was probably his greatest prophecy. And that it happened, and he fulfilled exactly what he said he would do on the schedule when he said he would do it. He said he was coming swiftly, he was coming soon. Everybody in the New Testament, Paul is saying, we who remain will be caught up. He's saying that he will be a part of that. Every single person in there, they are giving a strict language of, it's coming, he is at the door now. When I think of when I think of somebody's at my door and they're knocking at the door, I don't think that they're like 10 miles down the road stuck in traffic. Like, I'm saying, hey, they're at the door, let's go answer the door. And that's what everyone in the New Testament is saying. He is at the door, he is coming now to fulfill what he said he's going to do. And so, yeah, that's my position. And one more time, one more question? No? All right, that's good. So, what was that? Joey, what did you say?
You have about 7 minutes.
Oh, 7 minutes. My clock says a minute, so.
That was for your speech. Now you have
Oh, that was for my speech. Well, it's in the red now, so yes, go ahead. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at like prophetic language, you see like the moon will go blood red. You know, the sun will turn to sackcloth. There'll be earthquakes. There'll be wars. Let's take like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? Let's go through the 4 horsemen. The first is, many people say it's the Antichrist, but it's deception, propaganda, lies. The next is war, and then you get into the third is famine, and then finally death. I believe these are actually 4. I think there's good reason to believe these are 4 actual angels traveling around. That being said, you see this cyclically all through history. What happens is propaganda, the lies, the deception. It leads to war. What does war lead to? It leads to famine, destruction, then it leads to death. We see this all throughout history. And people are like, oh, they haven't come yet. Well, they came in World War II. They came all through history. And so you can actually take the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and you could actually, you could overlay Matthew 24 when he taught, it's the big war, this or that generation. You could lay them right over, and it's a perfect fit. And so, and a lot of times, yes, in prophetic language, we see repeated events, the coming of the locusts and all these different things like that. What I would specify, though, is different with Revelation is that we have to identify, for example, we could just say, like, we are ruled by the beast, right? Because Yah sees the governments of the world as beast governments. But there are some things different. For example, who is the whore of Babylon? Well, if anyone can agree that the whore of Babylon is the Yahudim, we have a problem then if Yehuda was, I believe they were divorced back in 70 AD. They killed the bridegroom. They murdered him. He gave them 40 years of repentance. Paul was writing about it all through Romans 2 and 3. He's like, you guys think that you can do whatever you want, and the Torah does not, the Torah will not hold you accountable because you're the chosen race. No, think again. He's coming for you first. He is coming to your house. He will bring judgment on you, and then he will work on the goyim. And so if we can agree that the whore of Babylon is Yehuda, that he divorced Israel in the Old Testament, and then we see the divorce of Yehuda in the New Testament, that's not a repeated event. That's a one-time affair. It happened in 70 AD. I personally believe he is done with the land. He is done with Israel. 1948 is not, that's not a movement of Yah. That is a movement of Satan, I believe. It's not even the people that were settling in there. And so I can't say that is the gunshot mark of like renewed prophecy, right? If that makes any sense. Yes?
Talk about the entitlement of the millennial reign.
Yeah, this is a... I appreciate that question, Michael, because this is something Frankly, this generation is the most entitled generation, right? The me generation, YouTube, right? It's your tube, MySpace, your Facebook, all this kind of stuff. And, back in the day, like the baby boomers, I think, had an average of like 2 or 3 photos in their house. I think the average millennial or whatever the generation is now, they have over 200 of themselves just in their house. It's a very, very entitled generation. And people come up to me all the time, and they're like, "You're stealing my hope, Noel. You're stealing it all. I wanted to go in the millennial kingdom and repopulate with 10 wives, 10 virgins, and all this kind of stuff." And it's just this entitlement that Yah owes this to me. He owes this. It's like, well, first of all, there's qualifications for who are the 144,000 and others. Do you really meet that, first of all? But secondly, it's like I would have loved to have been in the Garden of Eden. I would have loved to. I would have loved to have met Abraham. I would have loved to have walked with Yahushua HaMashiach. There's all sorts of things I would have loved to have been a part of, and I missed out on it. I could be entitled of, oh God, why did you send me to this rotten generation? I wish I was, wish I was walking with you, one of your disciples. It didn't work out that way. And the thing is that we have all of eternity to look forward to. Guys, come on. We're coming up on the 8th great day. Enoch says that when this week cycle comes to an end, whole new week cycles kick up, and we may very well be, the angels in the coming weeks to whole new groups of people, of sinners who are ministering to them. We have so much to look forward to. Yeah. So hopefully I answered that, Michael. I'm not quite sure. Yes. Yeah, I possibly. I don't know what's next. I know that New Jerusalem will either come down or be revealed. I believe I believe that the aim of Zionism, ironically enough, is to rally the nations to attack the real Mount Zion. All right. We talk about the alien invasion. A lot of us are saying, is it really going to be evil aliens, or are the aliens actually going to be the fathership, right? New Jerusalem. The nations have to rally together against the great threat that is going to melt. They have to build these underground tunnels and live like cockroaches down there because they can't escape. They know what's coming. So, they're not building the underground tunnels for the aliens. They're building it for, perhaps, and I'm not saying this is the outcome, but perhaps it is for New Jerusalem. So, yeah, and then of course we're all going to be judged and so on. I have a lot of questions myself as to what is next. But again, that's why I started out saying, look into the 8th great day and all the wonderful things that are fulfilled on the 8th great day. Joy, how are we doing? Okay. Thank you, everybody.